and we're going to start the presentation. Thank you all very much for joining us this morning. We're going to talk to you about the town investment plan. Okay, so I'm pleased to welcome this morning. We have James Wild, MP for North West Norfolk, Councillor Brian Long, leader of the Borough Council in West Norfolk, Councillor Graham Middleton, portfolio holder for business development with the Borough Council, Graham Purkins, who is the chair of the Kings Lynn Town Board, Jemma Curtis, Regeneration's programs manager. We also have Lorraine Gore, chief executive of the council, and I'm here just to chair the meeting this morning. So as I sort of said on email earlier, if we could just have microphones on mute unless you're speaking, please. Most of the details are in your press pack. With regard to questions, if you could direct them via the messaging facilities, and at the end I'll be able to have a look at the questions and direct them appropriately. If there's any questions you've got after the briefing, you can direct them to me. This is being recorded, as I mentioned, and will be shared on the Borough Council YouTube channel afterwards. So just before we begin, I'd like to hand over to James Wild for opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and good morning, everyone. I think this is an exciting moment for Kings Lynn, perhaps not as exciting as the US presidential election, but nonetheless very important. I think the Towns Fund was set up by the government to unleash the full economic potential and level up communities across the country. And I'm delighted that Kings Lynn is one of the 100 places that's going to benefit from the Towns Fund and that commitment to boost growth in all parts of the country. And we've already seen the positive benefit this fund can deliver with confirmation of the new School of Nursing at the College of West Anglia. That's going to create jobs for young people in skilled careers in the health service. And the investment plan that Brian, Graham and Graham are going to come on and talk about has really been developed to build on the strengths that Kings Lynn has, our strong heritage, the well-established businesses we've got here, as well as our proximity to the growth corridor around Cambridge. But wages are lower here. We need to do more on education and skills. And we know how special Kings Lynn is, but in many ways it's too much of an undiscovered gem. And this plan is an opportunity to change that. It's an opportunity to support economic recovery and growth. And by playing to the strengths of Lynn, it's an opportunity to make a town an even better place to live, work and visit. So I'm excited to be supporting this vision and hand over to Brian and Graham to take us through the slide deck.
Helps if I unmute myself. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, James, for your words. The opportunity that we have here, I mean, it's easy to say sort of once in a generation investment, but I mean, to put it into context, I've been involved with local government in Kings Lynn and West Norfolk now for 18 years, and I can't remember anything of the likes in terms of the level of investment that government is considering for you know, a town like Kings Lynn, and £25 million will potentially make a huge difference to the investment that we can make into the town, and hopefully that will have really positive outcomes for all of Kings Lynn and West Norfolk's residents. I really need to say something about the collaborative approach that we've had. Many areas that are within this scheme have formed sort of towns boards or similar, but you know, the Kings Lynn one, we're really impressed with the numbers of folks that have come forward, you know, local business and from all of our sort of partner organisations to really give us a broader spectrum of what we can provide within this plan. And obviously this is an opportunity to re-energise Kings Lynn, and actually as the sort of world evolves, it's going to be a pivotal part of our recovery from COVID-19. And it's been created by local people specifically for our area, so it will be right and pertinent for us. And it will no doubt look different to what we see from some of the others across the country, but I think it's definitely the right thing West Norfolk to be doing. And the government announced a total of £3.6 billion for the Towns Fund. And obviously that was an announcement, I think, that was made before COVID was considered. But our allocation of that is £25 million. And I think obviously the potential for that is very great. We need to make interventions that will help the economic productivity of West Norfolk and actually drive the local economy with the things that we do. And it's very much has to, as I said before, support the recovery from the impact of coronavirus. We need to reach an agreement and negotiate a sort of town deal with the government. And hopefully you'll see that from our submission we've got a vision for what Kings Lynn does, and hopefully we'll have detail back from the government before the end of March. I know that some of the other earliest submitters have already heard back, and I'm sort of confident that Norwich's bid has been successful, and I hope that will bode well for Kings Lynn. Have the next slide, please, Michelle. Obviously, within Kings Lynn and its surroundings, we have some real strengths and opportunities within the area, and some sectors of industry that do very well and are very strong, world leading, in fact. But we do need to move away somewhat from the lower wage, lower skills economy, and jobs that pay in excess of the average wage really are needed, because when people have that extra disposable income, that drives so much in terms of their spend and what it can do for the local economy. And I think within our bid, we are looking to try and help drive that economy forward. And we have got some challenges within that, but we also have some real assets, and obviously the history of the town and the surrounding natural environment has got to be a real bonus to what we are to achieve. I'll pass you on to Councillor Graham Middleton, and I'm sure he will dig down into some of the detail for you.
Yes, morning all. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, James. So I think what we've already heard is the introduction has got us to this point. And in order for us to look at how Kings Lynn can flourish in the future, we need to have a good vision. We need to have an ambitious vision. We need to know where we want Kings Lynn to end up at. And then we fill in the gaps with obviously the projects and the things that we would achieve in order to get there. So the vision as set out by us working with the town board, as says on this slide, so a revived historic waterfront, a place to live, a place to visit, a repurposed town centre. And I think where this part of the vision has changed over the course of this year, I mean, as we've already heard, this funding was announced, pre-COVID, and it's strange how a lot of the things that we were looking at in terms of that vision have ended up even more prominent now. We know the struggles that the town centre faces, and obviously we need to look at repurposing some of those space in the future to revitalise Kings Lynn and to move Kings Lynn forward. But a skilled workforce for a growing industry. Obviously, we've seen the successes already through the School of Nursing, and this ticks a massive box for us in terms of retaining young people within West Norfolk and Kings Lynn, but also the difficulties again faced by COVID, the reskilling of the workforce, that those who have been affected by COVID, in order to meet the demands of the employers that we're now seeing what they need. But a home for innovation and productive business. Obviously, we've got big plans in the future, previously and in the future, for the enterprise zone and for what we want that to look like. And I think what we're really pleased about is that this vision has enabled us, and this work has enabled us to really file down what that area should look like. And obviously, James spoke earlier about the impact of Cambridge and obviously what Cambridge tend to attract. And, you know, let's see what we can do to bring that our way. And also a sustainably connected town. I think that's fundamentally important, that Kings Lynn is connected in the right way to our key partners and our key areas. Next slide, please. So the outcomes. So once we've set a vision, we then need to look at what outcomes we want from that vision. So new opportunities for skills and jobs for our young people. As I said earlier, with the School of Nursing ticks a massive box for this. Growing innovative businesses. We want Kings Lynn to be the place where businesses can look at and think, I can thrive there. And I think if we look at our networking channels, you know, both inside and outside the council, the work that is done with the town board is a great example of business networking in Kings Lynn is strong. You know, oh, what happened there? Business networking is strong in Kings Lynn, and I think that's been proven by the board and how we've managed to put a strong board together to deliver the purposes of this plan. So a repurposed town centre with new experiences and businesses, high quality residential and leisure offer. Obviously, that will all come in terms of reducing congestion, creating better connectivity, and creating a high level walking and cycling areas inside and outside our town, and a sustainably connected town. So once we've looked at the vision, we can then put together our strategy. And obviously these three aspects here outline what we need to build our strategy around. Once we've got the vision in place, we then form the strategy. The strategy can then form the projects that we need to do. So innovative, growing business and skilled workforce, sustainably connected town, and a historic waterfront and repurposed town centre. So we have got a strong vision. It is an ambitious vision. And we now have obviously got this plan in place. I think we've got a strong plan. I think, you know, we stand a good chance, I hope, at getting the money that we require. But all these things are things that we need to build on in the future. And I just hope that if we are successful at this time, if we get this 25 million, then the vision and the strategy will be something that we're working on over the course of the next decade. Next slide. That's me. So I'll pass over to Graham Purkins, the chair of the town board. Thank you.
Graham, you're on mute.
Thank you, Brian. How's that? Thank you, Councillor Middleton. Establishing a town board may have been a prerequisite of the Towns Fund process, but it has become something that we can all be proud of. The role of the board was to provide oversight and governance for the creation of the town investment plan and be a vehicle through which the vision and strategy for the town is defined. In Kings Lynn, we brought together a board that encompasses a wide range of businesses, civic and community organisations, elected councillors and anchor institutions. And what this has achieved is significant. We have formed an energised team with a high level of engagement that has been fully committed and involved in the process to create and shape the town investment plan and help drive the future vision for Kings Lynn. And this has been accomplished during a time of increased challenge and uncertainty. The first board meeting was in January, back when we were able to meet face to face. The team have continued to meet throughout the year, keeping the process moving by virtual video conferences. Not an easy task, and I'm very appreciative to the whole team for their dedication and efforts in making it a success. And we don't plan to stop now that the town investment plan has been submitted. We will continue to build on the foundation we have laid, continue to work together for a better and brighter future for Kings Lynn. Next slide, please, Michelle. So a core philosophy throughout the process has been to involve the wider community. Engagement has been at the very heart of the development of the plan. We have sought the views of local people and local businesses on a wide variety of subjects, and the level of response we have seen has been truly inspiring. You can see a summary of some of the key numbers on the slide here. It is clear that people care about our town. The feedback that we have received through this process has helped us define the vision and projects that matter, and the ones that people care about most. A desire to make more of the riverfront, improved connectivity, a rejuvenated town centre, access to skills and opportunities to fulfil aspirations, and making the most of our proud and unique heritage. The town investment plan has been shaped by these voices. Next slide, please, Michelle. We've been fortunate in Kings Lynn that the Town's Fund is not the only funding opportunity we have had recently. While the Town Investment Plan is built from the foundation of the funding from the Town's Fund, it has been created with integration in mind for the other opportunities, the future high streets and the High Street Heritage Action Zone. All of these have been brought together under the single umbrella of Vision Kings Lynn, an integration of projects and initiatives to deliver a cohesive plan for a prosperous future. I'd now like to invite Jemma Curtis, Regeneration Programme Manager, to talk about the projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Good morning, everyone. These are the projects that we're submitting through the Towns Fund. Graham already talked about in the previous slide about projects that we've also submitted as part of our Future High Streets Fund, and there's also the High Street Heritage Action Zone as well. So these projects are specifically which we are submitting to government in our Towns Fund submission. Many of them are part of our strategic plans that we've had in the long term for a number of years. And some of them are newer projects that we are going to need to be doing more development work on. So I'll go through a summary of each. You've got details of most of these in your media pack. But in terms of around the theme of supporting innovation and growing our business and skilled workforce, we've got the School of Nursing, which we've already talked about. We're also looking at a new facility as part of our Nauru's Enterprise Zone, an innovation and collaboration incubator, which will be a workspace where particularly our strong manufacturing and advanced engineering and opportunities for research and development and other potential growth sectors that Kings Lynn may be able to move into and support will be a space for those to come together and support startup and training as part of that. Next project is around supporting the Youth and Retraining Pledge. Obviously, as highlighted in the previous slide, there are issues around our skills levels, and there's obviously going to be issues arising out of the pandemic around issues of youth unemployment and opportunities. So this is a particular targeted project to help support the needs of the young generation, to help them into employment and in light of what's happening at the moment. The Creative Hub is a project which is, we're looking to focus in the White Barn, which is part of the St George's Guildhall complex. The St George's Guildhall project was submitted as part of the Future High Streets Fund, but the Creative Hub will form part of that wider complex and provide a space where creative industries can come together, providing opportunities for training and small workshop space for those sectors to come together and collaborate and potentially start to develop their business, and obviously opportunities that can then arise through different events and acts that can take place as part of those sectors. The Active and Clean Connectivity is a programme of projects coming out of work that we've done through our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, but also linked to our work with our Kings Lynn transport strategy. So it includes looking at the gyratory in the town centre. Obviously, that's it's one of our highest priorities in our transport strategy to look at how we can improve congestion in that area, alleviate the air quality management issues, but also it's a very important gateway location from the train station through to the bus station into the town centre. So there's a huge opportunity there to be able to improve the public realm environment and improve the environment for cycling and walking. So that's one of the projects as part of that programme. Also included is the bridge, which will form part of the wider parkway scheme to the east of Kings Lynn, and that will improve the connectivity from the residential area and Gayton Road into the Hardwick, and improve, help alleviate congestion on the A149 and Gayton Road. The other project linked within that programme is also around improving some of the connectivity from the enterprise zone into the town centre. So looking at improved parking and cycling and walking infrastructure to go into the town centre from there. And this particular programme has the potential, particularly with our work on the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, there will be lots of later phases as other funding opportunities arise that we'll be able to develop this much further. But this is a start for what we see as the priorities that we can make a start on this wider programme. The riverfront is obviously has been a long-term ambition for the authority to revitalise our riverfront, and this is a package of infrastructure that we can start to support redevelopment of that area. So it looks at including public realm improvements towards the South Quay end of the riverfront, flood defence work to the Bold Quay, which will open up the site for future redevelopment in the future. And also looking at how we can revitalise the space around the Custom House and Kingsdale Square. Obviously, they are our iconic spaces. Everyone knows that area, they're underutilised, and there's opportunities there that we can do to improve the activity and the attraction of people coming down there. The next project is around our town centre repurposing fund, and this is separate to the High Street Heritage Action Zone programme, which is very much about heritage-led repurposing of properties. The town centre repurposing fund will have a wider remit and obviously a wider physical scope in terms of what we'll be looking to do, but we'll be looking at, we haven't identified any particular properties at the moment, but it is a funds that we want to use to be able to repurpose certain properties in the town centre for a mix of new business opportunities, potential sort of market hall type style, commercial space, and residential. And the final project is the Public Realm Fund, which we've secured some of the funding already through the accelerated funding along with the School of Nursing in September. But we've also secured other external funding from different pots. So we're looking to bring this all together, and we're starting work at the moment looking at a Public Realm Action Plan for Kings Lynn that will be able to coordinate all of the the spending of those funds, but be a very important element of the place shaping for Kings Lynn, making obviously all the different development sites that we and all the different projects that are on here and in our Future High Streets Fund, making sure the physical public realm improves the connectivity to all of those different projects and improve the connectivity for cycling and walking and for people visiting the area from the train station through the town centre through to the riverfront. So it's a really important piece of spatial work that we're doing at the moment. And there will be work that will be, physically on the ground. People will be able to see, the results of that, hopefully by a start on that by the end of the financial year. I think the other important thing to say as well, many of these projects you've already been familiar with, obviously the riverfront, our enterprise zone, they have been, our long-term strategic plans for the town for a number of years. So some are more developed than others. Once we've agreed heads of terms with government, we will be doing much more work on the details of these projects, and there will be opportunities in that for further engagement and consultation with businesses, our residents and stakeholders to help them shape our plans into the more detail over the next year before they become hopefully into delivery. Next slide, Michelle.
I think
Is that it for me?
Questions, but thank you, Gemma. Thank you, Councillor Long. Thank you, Councillor Middleton and Graham Purkins for that run through. If I could invite James Wild to share his closing remarks, please.
Thanks very much, Michelle. I think what comes across is the opportunity that we have here, the amount of money that's coming from the Towns Fund, potentially from the Future High Streets Fund, and the other programmes that the government's investing in. There is a real prize to seize here for Lynn, to create more opportunities, particularly for young people, to help businesses develop and grow, and to make more of the riverfront and the heritage that we have here, and to make Kings Lynn an even better place to live and work. And my role now, along with other members of the board, will be to take this to ministers and seek to secure the £25 million that is potentially on offer, and get this investment moving, and also to get these projects started as soon as possible. We've got the date set out here, and the ambition will be to do all of this within this Parliament.
So now we're able to take some questions. If everybody's able to, the easiest way to share them on the group chat. So if I can invite members of the media to share their questions on the group chat, if you can see that, okay, and then we can direct those. Chris, I can't, could you unmute, Chris? I can't.
Sorry, Michelle, hang on.
Okay.
I'm not very up on all this technology. I do apologise.
Do you have a, have you got a question you'd like to share, Chris?
No, you're right, I'm muting.
Okay.
Any questions?
Sue, do you have a question?
I was just going to say, obviously one of the speakers touched on that he thinks that you have got a strong case, you know, for all of this. Obviously, a huge amount of work has gone in, and it's, like you say, all very ambitious. So how do you think, probably maybe to Mr. Wild, how do you think Lynn does actually stand with this? And obviously we won't know until kind of March, but how does he think the town actually fares with the case it's put forward? What does he think our chances are of actually getting this money secured that is, you know, earmarked if we can fit the bill, so to speak?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Sue. I think, well, I'm probably slightly partial, but I think it's a strong case. It meets the criteria, importantly, that the government have set in terms of economic growth and recovery, and focusing on investing in towns to drive up productivity, incomes and investment. So I think I've had discussions with ministers during this process and around the other bids we've put forward, and the fact that Kings Lynn was selected as one of the 100 towns is a very good starting point. So I think the intent is there to support these bids, and I think we have got a well-rounded proposal that meets all of the criteria that are there, and I'll certainly be making the strongest possible case in favour of it.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you, James. Jill, I believe you've got a question you'd like to ask.
Yes, clearly there's so much in this. It's a big and quite a general sounding plan. Can you do a little bit, give us a little bit more detail about reviving the riverfront? It's been, you know, sort of coming and going for years and years. What specifically are you looking at there?
Jemma, is that something that you might be able to respond to?
Yeah, happy to answer that one. Obviously, you know, we have a master plan and a vision for the overall riverfront that we worked on a few years ago. That still, you know, is our ambition for the area. This is about what we've submitted through the Towns Fund is a first phase and a step towards delivery of that overall vision. So specifically, it's looking at the Custom House and how we can potentially provide create a exhibition space there and a visitor offer. Looking at the outer Purfleet, improving the infrastructure there that can enable potentially visiting vessels and potentially a floating restaurant, some form of an attraction that we can create there. So collectively around that area of the riverfront, we can start, creating more of an attraction for visitors and more activity down there. Further along towards South Quay, improving the public realm and opportunities for pop-up or markets and people, opportunities for, people to enjoy. People like being around the river. They like, being along there, and it is a stunning location. So making more of that space for people to be able to enjoy. And then moving towards Bowl Quay, looking at how we can make a start on the infrastructure there that's needed to help redevelopment of the overall site. So that would look at improving the flood defences. So that's what we've put in as part of the Towns Fund, which is effectively a first phase of our overall strategic plan for the area.
The plan's been around for a while though, and it hasn't attracted the investment you wanted. So how will this fund help with that? Because you haven't had people queuing to make that investment yet.
Could I come in and address that point? Thank you, Jill. You're absolutely right. And unless the sort of infrastructure that's put in place, such as the flood defences, it does make any investment by sort of a commercial investment, so much more difficult if they're expected to provide that kind of infrastructure that's not just needed to help the development in question, but also to enable, the town to be safer in itself. And I think it's always going to be an inhibitor to any commercial investment if they've got to expect to pay, millions of pounds to upgrade flood defences that everybody will get a benefit from. We really do need to see that investment in King's Lynn. We're aware of what's happening in the world, and we know that sea level rises will happen. Tidal range within King's Lynn is very great and will get greater, and we need to have robust defences in place that will encourage people to say yes. Well, we know we can build a building there, put our business there with plans for the future, because we can see that there's robust defences to enable that sort of thing to happen. So it's all part of a mixed picture, and unless you get the parts of the jigsaw right for the picture, it can't fall into place. And I mean, who would invest if they thought things like flood defences weren't in place adequate to do the job that's needed? So I think that this enables that kind of thing to happen, and it's actually similar to the circumstances looking at the investment in a bridge across the Sandline Railway, by opening up parts of the industrial estate and allowing easy egress for workers, from where they will be living, without having to go around roads that are congested. That makes living in the town easier, and actually investment potential better, because you've got an easier access to a workforce.
So that investment, that the government would be willing to go into investing in sea defences or flood defences to help the town, because clearly it is one of the things that's needed.
Yeah, obviously the existing flood defences that are there to protect what is there as existing. To get new investment for things that previously haven't needed defending, you've really got to have a business case for what you can get those defences to achieve for us. And I think that's this is really an example of that. They're always looking at maintaining the existing defences to the required level, and that's obviously governed by the high level shoreline management plan, and obviously King's Lynn is an asset that financially needs to be protected. It's when you come to do new things, who pays for those defences that weren't previously needed. And in this case, to enable this area to be developed and to go ahead, new defences are needed, to provide a robust and safe environment for people to develop.
Thank you, Councillor Long. So I've got 3 more questions from the floor. So from Beth Pridding, is there any indication at the moment of any impact the pandemic could have on this, or does it look like this will be relatively unaffected? Does anybody want to answer that question? Thank you, Councillor Middleton.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, we live in strange times. You know, we live in troubling times, and I think the effects of COVID, you know, are not going to be, you know, I think we can all assume that they're not going to disappear by Christmas. And obviously, what the future holds with that, we are unsure. What I can say is, I think where, like we said earlier, obviously this was all announced pre-COVID, and what I would say is what the board have done a very good job at is almost by going out there, by talking to businesses, by talking to local people, by talking to young people especially, we have changed what that potentially was 12 months ago and potentially what we're looking at today, in line with the needs of the town centre and of businesses on the whole. What impact it has in the long run, I think we're quite clear that the government want to support, and you know, obviously we're hearing good stuff from the government in terms of the, you know, the packages that they have put in place to support the economy and to support jobs, etc. So I think we can be quite sure that the funding isn't going to disappear, although we've not heard anything along those lines. So obviously we need to continue to change this forward, and obviously that vision and that strategy is going to have to change depending on what that demand is. As we sit here today, we feel we've got a good, strong plan, but obviously the effects of COVID are going to potentially have an impact depending on what happens which could potentially be over the course of 2021 now and not just 2020. So we'll keep very close to that. And obviously, if we're accepted this by the government, it might be that later on there are decisions and conversations that need to be had if the demands change in order to meet the needs of the businesses and our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Middleton. Lorraine, can I bring you in here, please? You've got your hand up.
Yeah, just to add to what Councillor Middleton just said, we are still seeing interest from private sector investors in Kings Lynn and interest in our town. Obviously, the pandemic has made their financial position even more challenging. So if we are successful with the town fund, that will help to possibly bring some of that investment forward. So some of that interest that we're already seeing, if we can secure the town fund to deal with some of the infrastructure, as Councillor Long referred to, that will help to bring that investment to our town.
Thank you, Lorraine. So the next question we have is from Richard Dix. We have streets of heritage shop fronts on High Street, etc., covered by modern plastic frontage. Any way we can encourage returns so we don't have to look up to see the hidden frontages? Councillor Long, is this a question that you'd like to answer?
Yes, I mean, it's something that many years ago in my previous working career, you know, I was involved with fenestration, and there are so many better modern shop frontages than some of the ones that we see, and actually there are sort of historic looking modern substrate shop frontages that could be utilized to replace downstairs that look sort of now outdated and very bland, that actually highlight the fact that above eye line, you know, we have got some absolutely superb architecture within our town, and not least, if you look above shop line along the high street. And so I think anything that can either renovate the past and uncover the sort of hidden facades behind some of those buildings, or at least if they have to be replaced with modern substrates, in terms of the manufacture of them, but have a heritage feel, I think it's got to be a real bonus and addition. And I think you see this when you sort of go around various towns in the country. A particular branch of a shop will look exactly the same in every location, apart from where the heritage has been made to come through. And I think that's what people like, and I think that people want to see something different from the average, and we've got that there, and it does need to be, I think, brought back into the fore. So I absolutely agree with you, Richard.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Middleton.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to add to Brian, what Brian stated there, obviously this is outside the Towns Fund, but obviously we have got the Heritage Action Zone that we're currently looking at. So this is similar to the project that took place on the Saturday Marketplace in Tower Street, and obviously we saw, well, just a complete revitalise of those areas compared to, you know, if we all remember how they were before those projects. The next phase of the Heritage Action Zone that we're now looking at will encapsulate the High Street, especially from the sort of Saturday Marketplace end forward, and obviously looking at how much we can put within that. And that specifically looks at, you know, revitalising the front of buildings. And obviously, you know, the previous projects we did were extremely successful and they work on a match funding process. So if we're successful with that, obviously it will be our role as the council to persuade, which are a lot of private individuals, obviously, who own many of the high street properties, to take that opportunity to invest in their frontages, and obviously, you know, bringing out the history of it. And I think, as Brian said, you know, and Richard, you know, you've highlighted as well, you don't often do it, but when you do stand back and look up sometimes, you know, some of the history in our high street shops is sometimes taken over by the modern frontages. And if you look up, you know, there's some fantastic architecture that obviously we need to protect and enhance for the future. So that hopefully will come in line with the next phase of HAS that we're currently looking at.
Councillor Middleton. Jemma, did you want to add anything to that?
No, Councillor Middleton covered everything I was going to say. Thank you.
So we've also got a question from Alistair Webb at the Lynn News. Clearly, most of these projects will be long term. How will the public be able to judge success in, say, 5 or 10 years' time? Who would like to answer that? Councillor Middleton.
Well, I think the easy option is we'll have a thriving high street, hopefully, in 10 years' time. And a lot of these projects would have been completed, obviously, if they're successful. But included within the bids as well, obviously, that, you know, the government laying out this money, you know, one of the things we are asked to do is a close sort of monitoring going forward of the effects and how successful these projects are. Obviously, that's all data that the government are going to want to collate over a period of time, because they'll want to know that their money has been spent wisely. But I think when we look at some of the projects within this, you know, there are some there that, you know, are about leisure, are about recreation and business use, and obviously we can judge them on how they're being used once they're put in place, and the effects that they're having for the town. And I think, you know, one of the big points there is the connectivity and the gyratory system. I mean, any major changes to that is going to have a massive impact on Kings Lynn, and hopefully, you know, will relieve congestion as a result of it. Brian might want to add something else, or say too much.
Yeah, I think the bottom line on all of this will be that the public, you know, they will see a difference, and they will see things starting to change, and schemes progressing, and they, you know, they will physically notice the difference. I think when you invest in this sort of money, you wouldn't expect anything less than that. I think over the years, you know, people sort of look at other areas and say, oh, you know, isn't so and so nice, isn't wherever nice, and actually they've got something that's really, really attractive on their own doorstep. But because it is just here and the way that it's always been, people that just sort of take that for granted. And I think when we put this kind of investment in, I think the you know, the public will see it, and they'll appreciate the differences in terms of the physical form of what's done. But actually, the thing that won't necessarily be noticeable to everybody, but I think some of the biggest benefits that we will have within this will be those. For instance, if you take the School of Nursing as an example of something that's being funded by this project, we will have better qualified staff training in this area, hopefully staying in this area, spending their, you know, they're using their increased spending power in this area, and that will have a knock-on effect and drive the local economy, and obviously individually, you know, there will be people who really benefit from that. And obviously the important part of all of that is because, by having better qualified people, we get better aspiration within people, and that in itself will give the town a good feel-good factor, about the people who live here in the future that they have in Kings Lynn and surrounding areas.
Councillor Long, I've had a couple of questions from Chris Bishop at the EDP. So the first one is, where is the bridge that's mentioned going to be, and when do you expect a decision from Whitehall? Jemma, perhaps you could answer the first part of that question.
Yeah, so it's currently under being submitted for planning as part of the wider Parkway housing development. So you'll be able to go onto the planning portal and look for the precise location, but it is from the Parkway housing site over the sand line and goes into the Hardwick Industrial Estate. So it's redeveloping the existing bridge that's already there, so it can take vehicular, cycle and walking traffic.
Thank you. And then the second part of that question is, when do you expect a decision from Whitehall? Would you like to answer that?
You have me take that one?
Yes.
Well, we're hoping we'll get an indication and feedback from government before Christmas, but obviously that will be subject to everything else that's going on in government at the moment that they're having to deal with. So we hope to get some feedback by then in terms of that they're happy with the content of our plan. And then we will be working towards signing a heads terms agreement by the end of March. That's the timetable they've set out for us at the moment, which we hope we'll be able to continue on.
Jemma, so a question from Jill Bennett. Follow up to that, how can you tackle the buildings now in a poor state of repair but owned by absentee landlords? Who would like to answer that? Councillor Middleton?
Yeah, I can. I think it's always a difficult one, isn't it? A lot of these, it's the same, quite the same as, obviously I get asked quite a lot at council around empty shops and what are we doing as a council to get people in those shops and decrease rents that are potentially perceived as too high. The issue we have is a lot of these buildings and the way that they're commercially rented are by private individuals, whether that's a range of private individuals themselves, potentially investment funds and hedge funds and those who do invest in that type of property. Obviously, the wider plan that we've been looking at for some time now is utilising space above those shop floors into more residential units. And that's something that we've been tackling and talking to a lot of these private individuals about for the last couple of years, really, and also with Freebridge Housing with that as well. Obviously, where listed buildings are considered, obviously there are powers that we can approach some of these private individuals, especially if they're falling down and crumbling and in a bad state of repair. But apart from that, it is down to the sort of the powers of persuasion. And I think the difficulty with the high street is the future is a little bit unknown. Obviously, for the businesses who reside in those premises, the future is a difficult one to sort of judge at the moment. And obviously, a lot of these private firms and investment companies, etc., who own the building, they're businesses themselves as well. Their income is the rents from the buildings that they own. So I think it's worth considering sort of the position that they find themselves in. But it's exactly why, we as a council look at instigating this movement by things like the Heritage Action Zone projects, like we said earlier, that have proved extremely successful. That sort of puts the ball in our court a little bit and gives us more clout when we go and talk to these private individuals. And obviously they're conversations that we will continue to have into the future. We want not only there to be the Kings Lynn to be somewhere for somebody, for people to visit and for those who live here, but we want it to look good as well. We want to see shop frontages and buildings that aren't falling down and in a bad state of repair. So we'll continue to have those conversations and we'll continue to put our plans in place for where we can play our part. But a large part of it is unfortunately on the owners of those buildings themselves. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything.
Yeah, all I would add to that is, you know, I think with absentee landlords that don't have a particular stake in the town, but for the fact that they happen to own a building, I mean, there will be incentives to do the right thing, provided by such as the Heritage Action Zone funding. And obviously, for the worst examples, if the carrot doesn't work, well, then the stick will have to, and you know, enforcement action would need to be taken if buildings really become a detriment to their surrounding, you know, the premises that surround them, because you know, people are out there trying to do the best they can, you know, in business, and actually, if you've got a neighbouring empty, derelict, getting worse property next to you, that's not going to help those people. And so, as I said, it's sometimes enforcement action is what's needed. And you know, if the funding is going to be there to make things right, but people still choose not to, we really will have to consider every possible avenue that's open to us as a local authority to make some of these absentee landlords toe the line and bring their buildings up to the specification that we want to see in Kings Lynn. You know, one detracts from many, doesn't it? One bad one detracts from many. And however good the neighbouring properties are, and however well they present themselves, you know, the one that looks rough makes the whole area look rough, and we don't want that. We absolutely, that's not right for Kings Lynn, and it's not going to be acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Long.
Thank you.
We've got just under 10 minutes left, and I've got some two more questions, one from Chris Bishop, one from Alistair Webb. So if we just answer those, and then if anybody has any additional questions, if you could send them to me on email afterwards, and I can respond to them in that way. So a question from Chris Bishop is Vision Kings Lynn the name of the plan which has been drawn up by the town board? Who would like to respond to that? Jemma, is that one for you?
Yeah, I mean, the plan is Kings Lynn Town Investment Plan, but we're doing it under the brand of Vision Kings Lynn. We've been using that as our brand and banner for which all of our engagement and communication that we've done throughout this whole process, both in Future High Streets Fund and the Towns Fund. So that is very much the brand for everything that we, you know, for our ambition for Kings Lynn. But the actual plan we've submitted is the Kings Lynn Town Investment Plan.
Thank you, Jemma. So I've just got two questions from Alistair in here. So if we start with the first one, is there a location in mind for the new community hub library, such as the old Argos building? Jemma, is that one for you?
Yeah, I can confirm that the Maltese Community Hub, we are looking at the former Argos building for that, and that's being led by Norfolk County Council. They will be leading in terms of delivery of that project if the funding is successful from the Future High Streets Fund.
Thank you, Jemma. And then the ICI, how will the project be moved forward in order to prevent a repeat of the issues we saw with Click? Who'd like to answer that?
Yeah, I can, or I'm sure Graham will want to say something. I think that the difference will be is that we won't be involving a partner that can't deliver on what they're asking to do, and I think the success within the Click building is obvious in terms of what it was set up to do. It's full to capacity, and there is obviously a need and a desire for that kind of workspace, and I think on that basis, you know, this needs to be done in a way that learns from the lessons of what happened before, but obviously not in partnership with an organisation that can't necessarily deliver. It needs to be kept within the direct control of the local authorities.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Middleton, did you have a add to that?
Yeah, just to add to that. Yeah, so you know, echo Brian's points with the fact of, you know, this is being delivered. It's quite a different project, isn't it? I mean, you know, Click in itself was a unique model of delivery that was brought to this council a number of years ago. I don't think we need to dive into exactly what has happened there, but But what we can see is well, a part of the Click project fell over in the terms of, you know, the delivery by the partner who we joined with. I mean, the successes of, you know, we've got a guy sat in front of us, you know, Graham Purkins from Merksin, you know, is a great example of a thriving business over the course of the last 4 or 5 years that have flourished in the Click building and very much like to be a part of the community that building has now involved and encapsulated over time. And I think it comes back slightly to our, you know, when we talk about the vision and the strategy and where we want to see Kings Lynn. I think the innovation and collaboration centre is probably going to be more on par with the Click than the community hub is going to be, in terms of that delivery of, you know, enhanced engineering and workshop space, and as that sort of incubator for that innovative businesses that we like to see and promote to bring into Kings Lynn. And I think as a part of all of this, and obviously that wider vision, that end of town with the enterprise zone, you know, we need to look at what do we want the identity of that to be. And I think there's another advantage in some ways with Click now being under the council's control, is that we can also include that building in what we want that vision to be. What do we want the perception of the enterprise zone to be outside of Kings Lynn? And obviously that wider sort of brand development of that area of the town will now include Click within that in the future. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's a slightly strange way of getting here, but as it currently stands, you know, the Click building is at the moment a good investment in terms of the value of it. It's full, it's delivering a good rate of return, and obviously we'll look at pushing that forward into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Middleton. So that's almost 11 o'clock. So if I could just say thank you to James Wild, to Councillor Long, to Councillor Middleton, to Graham Purkins, to Jemma Curtis, to Lorraine Gore for talking us through the plan and answering the questions today. Thank you all for joining us today. And if there's any other questions, if you could just forward them to me on email and we will answer them there. So thank you.
Michelle, I have noticed that Jill has popped another question into the chat.
Okay.
And it's when will the sort of specific details of all these projects be made public, or will they continue to be discussed in private? Obviously, we're keen for them to be made public as soon as they can be. The difficulty is, of course, if we say we're interested in building X because we need it as part of this project, suddenly the owner of building X puts the price up. So we have to keep that stuff below the line. And as soon as we can get it out into the public domain, when we've got terms agreed, you know, we'll be driving the best value that we can out of the money that we have available. The worst thing we could do is tell everybody we're desperate to buy, you know, a certain premises or a certain area or whatever. You bet your bottom dollar the price would go up, and that would be a detriment to delivering the overall part of the scheme. So, you know, I'm really keen that, you know, really desperate to tell people, you know, exactly what we've got in mind, but to do it at this point in time would prejudice the overall delivery of the scheme, because it could well have an adverse effect on prices and obviously lessen our negotiation abilities with potential landowners or premises owners and so on. But appreciate your concern, Jill. I want the information out there as much as you want to report on it.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Thanks for spotting that last question. So if there are any others, if you could just drop them through to me on email and we'll come back to you. But thank you everyone for your time today. That's been really good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Very much.
Bye, guys.